Hello everyone and welcome to week 3 of the Serendipity Knit Along. This week we're going to be doing the sleeves. There's a lot to do here, so let's get started. This is what the assembled cardigan looks like at the end of week 2. We've grafted the side tabs together. That is the neck edge. And this week we're going to add sleeves. And we need to begin by picking up stitches along the upper edge of the side tab. Now we need to know how many stitches to pick up. And for that we need to go to the worksheet. Now we need to determine the number of stitches we're going to pick up or cast on around the sleeve. Please find this worksheet in your pattern, and we're going to be calculating N, which is your pickup number. Alright, for my cardigan I worked to round 59. I add 1 to that, which gives me 60. I divide that by 4, which gives me 15. I add 2 for the gaps, which is 17, and because it's odd, I add 1 and make it 18. I will be picking up 18 stitches along the top of my side tabs. Not only will I be picking up this number of stitches along the top of the side tab and the bottom of the side tab, I'll be casting on the same number at the shoulder. Once you have calculated N, you then need to find every place in the pattern where there's a box like this with an N next to it and write in your N. While your pattern has all of the specifics for how to establish the sleeve stitches, I wanted to give you a peek of how things look. This is having worked the first complete round. From this point things are going to be worked in short rows while you're doing the sleeve cap. Note the marker positions. The beginning of the round is always the upper right portion of the side tabs, and you're going to be picking up your stitches for the most part in the final purl of the garter stitch ridges. The final stitch or two of the cable cast on can be kind of crowded together, so when you work your first round, be sure that you have the correct number of stitches when you work this area. Whenever you work a wrap together with a stitch, it's going to leave a little bit of evidence. And if it's on the wrong side, like here, that's fine. But you don't want that line showing up on the right side. And that's what will happen with these stitches, these purls, if you don't work your wrap slightly differently. That method is different for the front and the back of the work. Here's how you do it. Alright, so the stitch looks like a knit, but it's on the wrong side. And it's wrapped. And what you would normally do with a wrapped knit stitch is come up in the wrap and into the knit, and then work the stitches together, like that. But that will leave this line on the right side of the work. So to avoid that line on the front, what you do is first lift the wrap over the stitch, like this. Alright, so the wrap is before the stitch, and then you work them together. And that's going to leave no evidence of that line on the front. And this is for a wrapped purl when worked on the right side. And normally what you would do is come up in the back and then work your purl and be done like that. To avoid that little bit of a blemish, come up under the front of the wrap and put it on the needle and then purl both together. This is the first part of the sleeve cap. These are the shoulder stitches, and I've been working in short rows centered around the top of the shoulder. And with each pass, with each right side row, I'm working at a decrease on each side of the shoulder, and I continue to do that until the 2 decreases are adjacent. At this point I can remove these 2 markers and can just continue in short rows until I get to these underarm markers down here by the side tabs. Okay, now I've finished the second part of the short rows of the sleeve cap, and my final wrap stitch was immediately before the stitch marker. Now it's time to begin the second type of short row finishing. Instead of doing wraps and turns, you're going to be doing decreases and turns. So slip the marker, slip, slip, knit, and then turn. And you are done with this when the final 2 decreases are adjacent to each other. Here is the completed sleeve cap. Along this raglan sleeve line is where you work the wraps and turns. Along the top of the side tabs is where you worked the decreases. And I've worked the first round of the sleeve, and I want to point out that this gap is completely normal. And you should have a yarn tail left from whatever finishing you did on the side, and you can use that to cinch this gap closed in your finishing. Once you've completed your sleeve cap, you're going to work even with no increases or decreases until it's time to begin the cuff. So it's time to determine how long you're going to make your sleeve, and for this you need to find the sleeve length worksheet. Women's garments tend to have sleeves from the armpit to cuff that range between 16.5 to 18.5 inches. So just you need to decide what you want your final length to be. I've chosen 18 inches for mine. I want them a little on the long side. For my cardigan, my blocked row gauge is 7.66 rows per inch. All right, and the cuffs are worked in bands of 9 rounds. And each band is going to be 1.17 inches. So the 9 rounds divided by the 7.66. Alright, I have to have a minimum of 3 bands. So no matter which gauge you're working at, you need to have at least 3 bands. And so my minimum cuff length is going to be 3.5 inches. Okay. I want to have something closer to 5 inches though, so I'm going to take my minimum cuff length of 3.5 inches and start adding 1.17, the length of an individual band to it, until I get into the ballpark of 5 inches. And one additional band will bring me to 4.67 inches, and that is going to represent 4 bands. 4 bands, 9 rounds each. I'm going to have 36 cuff rounds. And now to determine how far I need to work before I begin the cuff, what I'll do is I'll take my preferred sleeve length of 18 inches and subtract my cuff length of 4.67 inches. And that is going to bring me to 13.3 inches. This is how far I need to work before I begin the edging for the cuff. Now notice that there are 3 different statements which are underlined in this worksheet. You are going to find those statements actually in the pattern, and you're going to write the number associated with your worksheet into the pattern. This is how you work the right twist in knit. Bring the yarn to the front of your work, slip the first stitch, knit the second stitch. Then take the left needle behind your work and insert it into the first stitch. I use my left thumb to brace the bottom of the 2 stitches and remove the right needle from both stitches. Bring it forward and insert it into the second stitch. Pull it across, take the yarn, make sure the yarn is behind, knit the next stitch. I have crossed those 2 stitches. Now you work the right twist in purl. Bring the yarn forward and slip 1 stitch. Purl the second stitch. Then take your left needle behind the work and insert it into the back of the first stitch, like that. Carefully, I use my left thumb to brace the bottom of the stitches so they don't run on me. I remove the right needle from both stitches, bring it in front of the first stitch, and insert it into the second stitch. Now let's cross those 2 stitches, and then I purl the second stitch. I've decided to place bell-shaped cuffs on my cardigan. I wanted to show you a quick and easy way to figure out where the increasing edge stitch patterns should be worked on the cuff. All right, and there are 4 different places on the sleeve where you will see this sequence: purl 2, knit 2, purl 2. And it's at the center 2 stitches where you will work the increasing edge stitch pattern. So whenever you're working this section of the cuff, you'll be working plain edging, and whenever you're working between the stitch markers, they're in 4 places around the cuff, you will be working the increasing edge stitch pattern. I've completed the first band on my cuff, and this is the increasing stitch pattern between the 2 markers, and at the end of the first band there are 6 stitches between the markers. So what you'll do for the first round of the second band is remove these 2 markers and replace them next to the center 2 stitches, and then you'll begin again with the increasing edge stitch pattern. Completed bell cuff. Increasing stitch patterns in 4 places. This wraps things up for week 3. At this point you should have a cardigan that looks a little bit like this, or pullover that looks a little bit like this. Next week we are going to begin by filling in the side sections that are missing and doing the edges and getting everything finished up. So until then, happy knitting!